is making you lonely, you can always go downtown. When you've got worries, all the noise and the hurry seems to help, I know. Downtown, just listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk where the neon signs are pretty. How can you lose? The lights are much brighter there. You can't forget all your troubles, forget all your cares. So go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. No finer place.
That was Petula Clark, and she sang Downtown on American television for the first time in 1964. It was a #1 hit. It was her first entrance into the American charts, and she was the first lady from England to have a #1 record in America. She followed the British invasion, John, Paul, George, Ringo, Dave Clark, Five, Manfred Mann, but she was something special. She was something special to me. I loved her. I loved her voice. I loved the songs she sang. Ed Sullivan had her on his show, March 14, 1965. She sang Downtown. Ed tells a story about how the plane landed 45 minutes before she was scheduled to be on TV. She finally walks on the stage, no rehearsal, nothing. She hits it perfectly. The crowd loved her. Ed loved her, called her a true professional. Have to remember, in 1965, she was 33 years old. From the moment she first took the stage, which we just saw in 1964 on American television, I fell in love with her voice, fell in love with her appearance, the way she handled herself. She wasn't showy, she wasn't all made up. She was just Petula. She'd been singing on stage since she was just a little kid back in England. She sang during the war, entertaining the troops during the war, entertaining the people who were hiding from the bombing of Nazi Germany during the war when London was being blasted by the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. Everybody was hiding and trying to keep out of the way of danger. These bombs were falling and people were dying. Buildings were being destroyed. But Petula was singing and recording. That was her way of expression. I saw her perform for the very first time live in 2003 in a small town just north of Cincinnati, Ohio. It was an outdoor theater. There was a band shell in the crowd. About 5,000 people were out in the sunshine. But it was a hot August night. The weather got warm, the temperatures rose, and there was a big storm. It was a rainstorm. It wasn't thunder or lightning. And the crowd was watching Petula on stage. I was lucky. A friend of mine was the concert producer. He was from Gary, Indiana. He gave me a seat on stage. I was out of the rain. Petula was out of the rain. The band was undercover. But the crowd was outside, and they were getting soaked. Petula asked them, "You want to stop? You want to take a break? You want to quit?" No, no, no. They sat through the rain and they got soaked everywhere, but they loved it. By the time the concert ended, the rain was gone too, and it was a beautiful day. So afterwards, I got to take a picture with Petula. I said, "I drove a long way. I was hoping I would hear you sing my favorite song, Kiss Me Goodbye." She said, "Well, if you had requested it, if you had yelled it out, I would have sang it for you." I said, "I was sitting behind you on stage, only about 20 feet away. It would have looked too hokey, too much of a put on. I couldn't do that." She said, "Well, maybe next time you come and I'll sing it for you then." As everybody was leaving, Petula talked to the crowds, talked to all the fans, talked to everybody, but I was standing around watching her. And her manager was standing, as you can see him to the picture, he's to the right of me, the tall guy in the white shirt. I said, "John, do you think if I asked her to kiss me goodbye, she would do it?" He goes, "I think she might. Why don't you ask her? Give it a try." Well, I'm watching her talk to all these people, and I'm losing my courage with every passing second. I said, "John, what do you think? Should I do it?" He said, "Yeah, do it." So I did. She's turning around, getting ready to leave. I said, "My darling, kiss me goodbye." A friend of mine had my camera, and he took the picture. And Petula's got her arms outstretched. My arms are outstretched. Her security guard sees what's happening. He's got his umbrella. He puts it around so nobody interferes. And Petula walks up to me, hugs me. Into my right ear, she sings the first two verses of the song.
We choose it, win or lose it. Love is never quite the same. I love you, now I've lost you. Don't feel bad, You're not to blame. So kiss me goodbye, and I'll try not to cry.
Everybody's watching. Everybody's stunned, including me. Then she kisses me, and she says goodbye. I love just the way it unfolded and how nice she was about it. A couple years later, I saw her again. I told her about that concert. I don't think she really remembered kissing me goodbye, but she certainly remembered the rainstorm because she described it in detail. The crowd wouldn't leave. They didn't want to stop. I sang through the rain and I felt so bad for them, but no, they wanted me to continue, so I did. When you approach these legends backstage, it's always best not to have your camera with you. They like to relax. They don't want to be on all the time. Some of them are not made up. Some of them have already taken their makeup off. Some of them are no longer wearing their stage attire. They don't always want to be photographed. And that allows me to talk to them and to actually be a friend for those few moments I get to speak with them. So I saw Petula again in Ada, Ohio, at the Freed Center. I'd been in touch with the band who wrote Kiss Me Goodbye, Les Reed. Les wrote a lot of great songs. He wrote for Tom Jones, It's Not Unusual, and Delilah. He wrote The Last Waltz for Engelbert Humperdinck. He wrote There's Kind of a Hush. Peter Noon and Herman Hermit took that to the top of the chart. And he wrote my favorite, Kiss Me Goodbye. I told Sir Les Reed, who has been knighted by Queen Elizabeth, that I was going to go see Petula again. Hopefully she would sing Kiss Me Goodbye. He said, when you talk to Petula, tell her one thing. I never told her this story. I never told anybody. I know for certain she does not know it, but I want her to know this now. When Hitler bombed London, he bombed London from September 7th, 1940 to December 29th, 1940. During that time, Petula turned 8 years old. A couple years later, Hitler decided if we bomb the neighborhoods, if we bomb where the people live, we'd scare them enough and anger them enough so that they would be so upset they would tell Churchill, no more war, surrender to Hitler, we could live in peace. So as we approached the back door, the stage door of this beautiful concert hall, walked in, and there was nobody around. Couldn't see anybody. So I walked down the hallway, past all the closed doors for the dressing rooms. I turned right, went down another hall, and I was behind the stage, but nobody was around. So I found one person, and I asked her, I said, is John here? John is Petula's manager. And she said, no, John is not here, but she gave me the name of another person who I didn't know. I said, well, I'm a friend of John's, and I was hoping to see him. And she says, no, he's not here. I said, okay, thank you. And she left. She walked away. So we just stood there. We just waited there for a few minutes and hoping to find somebody who could give me some kind of a direction and at least tell me where Petula was. After a few minutes of dead air, dead silence, Petula walks around the corner. She's not dressed in stage attire. She's not prepared to go on stage. She has no makeup on. She is not in her concert performance mode yet. So, said hello to her. The one thing that brings out a smile in these performers is when they look at you, they see you're not carrying a camera and they don't have to be on. They're not there to perform or they're not there to be recorded. When they're not dressed in their stage attire, when they're not prepared with makeup, they're not prepared to go on, they really don't want to be bothered with a camera because that changes everything. Knowing that others are going to see this and this is the image that she has to project. So I usually leave a camera in the car when I go backstage for the first time. I did that here. And Petula was very unguarded, very warm, and willing to talk. She had nobody to talk to and she was absolutely happy to find somebody here in America where she could have a conversation. So we began to talk, and I told her about the first time that I had met her at the concert where it rained, and she remembered that. She began to add some details about the way the audience was getting soaked. She kept asking the audience if they wanted her to stop singing so everybody could run for cover, but they all continually said no, no, so she continued to sing. We talked about that concert, and I showed her the picture of where she Kissed Me Goodbye. Whether or not she remembered that, but she thought it was a nice event, and she liked that. And she was willing to talk more, knowing that I've met her in the past and that we just shared a fun moment together. I told her that I'd been in touch with Sir Les Reed. She said, "Oh, he wrote Kiss Me Goodbye." I said, "Yes, I'm aware of that, Petula. That's why I mentioned Les Reed, because I've been emailing him back and forth for several years, and he wanted me to give you a message." So she gets concerned. "Oh?" I said, "Do you remember back during World War II when you were a young girl and the Nazis bombed London? They bombed your neighborhood, but they did not bomb your house. But the big bombs, as they dropped in the neighborhood, caused damage to everybody's homes, and they caused damage to your family's home." And she agreed. She remembered that. Shook her head and said, "Oh yeah." And she's telling me about what it was like back then, and I mean, unless you lived through that, who could imagine that? So she was only about 10 years old at that time. I said, "Your house was bombed, and there came a time when the house had to be repaired. The brickwork had to be redone because the bricks were damaged." And she remembered that. And she nodded and said yes. And then I told her there was a time when a bricklayer came out to your house to fix the bricks on your house. And he worked there for a couple of days, and he had with him a young boy. I was his son, his helper. She remembered that. I'm sure these are things you wouldn't forget. I said, "That young boy was Les Reed." "Oh?" I said, "Les wanted me to tell you this story. He said he knows you never knew that." And she said, "I didn't know that. But he wanted you to know that." When I told him I was coming to your concert here, he said, "Please give her this message for me." He said he doesn't remember ever telling anybody that, and he knows you don't know that story. She said, "I never knew that." I said, "Well, that's why he asked me to tell you, so I'm glad I did." And while I'm talking to her, she's crying. Now here I am backstage with Petula Clark making her cry. Well, it's not really me that's making her cry, it's the emotion of the connection between her and Les Reed during World War II. Of course, my friend and I were starting to cry too. There was nobody around, just the three of us, with tears, talking about what happened and the fact that she never knew that. And she was so glad that I told her that. We talked for about 35 or 40 minutes. Then we said goodbye. We'll let her get ready for her performance. And she said, "Thank you." And I said, "I hope to see you after the concert." Because after the concert they were having a reception for dignitaries. If I can get backstage, I can get into this event. We went out, we changed our clothes into concert-going clothes, and then we sat in our seats. We had tickets for seats in the 10th row. Now, of course, Petula can't see the audience with the bright lights, and she's walking the stage and singing her songs. And she was on there for maybe an hour, 15, 20 minutes. Her concerts always end the same way. Final song is Downtown. She'll leave the stage, come back for an encore. It's always an upbeat song such as Color My World. I'm waiting for her to sing Kiss Me Goodbye, and we're going through all of her songs. She talked about John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo, the Beatles. She was there during the recording of Hey Jude, and she visited John and Yoko in the bed-in in the hotel in Montreal. I loved it all, but I'm waiting for Kiss Me Goodbye, and we're getting towards the end. Then I see Kenny Clayton, her pianist. He's been with her for 40 years. He takes his hand and he strokes the chimes that are sitting on top of the piano. And she begins the song. And she sang these words.
We choose it, win or lose it.
This is for you, Tom.
Love is never.
Nobody in the audience knew who Tom was, and she didn't know where Tom was, but she said that to me. And I know that her heart was melting from that memory of Les Reed as an 8-year-old boy coming to her house where she was a 10-year-old girl and helping to repair the house during World War II. And she said that. I looked at my friend and we just started tears again. I don't think anybody saw us. Nobody would have known. Everybody's watching Petula, but nobody would have known why am I crying while Petula's singing. But it was really internal. My heart was melting. And it's something I will never forget. So she finished the concert, went to the event afterwards. We talked some more, but there were people who wanted to see her and touch her and be with her. And she could stand next to her and get some pictures taken. And it was just beautiful to watch. But I will never forget Petula. And I've seen her many times after that too. She doesn't always sing Kiss Me Goodbye. I believe that was the last time that I saw Petula sing Kiss Me Goodbye. So I got back to my house and I sent an email to Les Reed. I said, Les, you'll never believe what happened. I told her the story backstage before she even prepared for the concert. And she began to cry. And I began to cry too. It was such an emotional event. And then while I was in the audience, she sang just the first two lines and said, "This is for you, Tom." And my heart melted again, Les, because you told me to give her that message, because that message meant so much to Petula. And I want to thank you for that opportunity. And she dedicated that song to me. Les wrote me back, and he said, "Tom, I have seen Petula," and this is years ago, so you have to remember this is not now. Les has long since been gone. He wrote back and he said, "I have seen Petula perform over 100 times, over 40 years. I have never seen her dedicate any song from the stage to any person." That was something special. I said, yes, I know it was, and I'll never forget it. So, Les is gone, Petula's not performing anymore. But she did give me one final kiss goodbye.
That girl is your tomorrow. I belong to yesterday. So kiss me goodbye, and I'll try not to cry. All the tears in the world won't change your